The 12 Nights of Terror. The first night. Before we begin, please note, this story contains elements of suspense and fear. Viewer discretion is advised. Christmas is supposed to be a season of joy, right? Warm lights, hot cocoa, and laughter echoed through the house. That's how it's always been for me. But this year it feels different, like there's something heavy in the air that I can't shake. I noticed it a few nights ago. I'd just gotten home from a long day at work, my feet dragging as I pulled my scarf tighter around me to block out the chill. The snow was falling softly, covering the neighborhood in that perfect, quiet blanket. Usually I love that kind of peace, but that night, something about it made me feel uneasy. It was just a normal night. Or at least, I thought it was. I was sipping hot chocolate, watching the lights twinkle on the tree, trying to unwind when I heard it. A knock at the door. Faint, almost polite, like someone tapping just enough to get my attention but not enough to scare me. At first, I figured it was the wind, or maybe a branch tapping, but something told me to check. So I got up, walked over, and peered through the peephole. But no one was there, just empty snow-covered steps. Then I saw it, a card just lying there on the doormat. No envelope, no stamp, just "To Alex" written on the front in neat, careful handwriting. I looked around, hoping to catch a glimpse of whoever left it, but the street was empty, just shadows stretching out under the street lamps. I figured it was some kind of prank, maybe from a neighbor or someone in the building. But when I opened it, my heart skipped a beat. "Merry Christmas, Alex. Be careful what you wish for. A friend." Be careful what you wish for. What does that even mean? I tried to brush it off, tell myself it was some weird joke. I laughed it off, but there was something about it that felt personal. Like whoever wrote it knew me. I couldn't shake it. The words kept echoing in my head. Be careful what you wish for. And for some reason, I couldn't help but wonder, what had I wished for recently? I tried to sleep, but my mind kept circling back to that card. What kind of friend leaves something like that? And why? Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I must have drifted off, but it didn't last long. It was a little after midnight when I heard it. A creak, soft but unmistakable, like someone stepping on an old wooden floorboard. I froze, my heart hammering as I strained to listen. But then, silence. I told myself it was nothing. Houses make noises, right? Pipes, floors settling. But just as I was convincing myself to relax, I heard it again. This time, it was closer. Slow, deliberate footsteps, moving down the hallway outside my room. I lay there, barely breathing, hoping it was my imagination. But then, another step. And another. I wanted to call out, but my voice was caught in my throat. Instead, I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, tiptoeing toward the door. There was nothing, just an empty hallway, shadows spilling across the walls from the streetlight outside. I let out a shaky breath, feeling silly for scaring myself. But as I stepped back into my room, something caught my eye. It was another card. This one was smaller, like a note card, and on it were just 2 words. Night 1. Night 1? I didn't understand. Was this some kind of countdown? A warning? My fingers felt ice cold as I stood there, staring at those 2 words. The chill that had settled over me when I found the first card was back, sharper than ever. I wanted to believe it was a prank, that someone was messing with me, but deep down, I knew this was something more. And as I sat there, clutching that card, I realized I didn't just feel scared. I felt watched. I barely slept that night. Every creak, every shadow, every flicker of light set my nerves on edge. By the time dawn came, I was practically counting the minutes, but that didn't make me feel any better. I thought about calling someone, maybe a friend or even the police. But what would I say? Someone left me a creepy Christmas card. It sounded ridiculous. So I kept quiet, hoping it would stop on its own. I tried to go about my day as usual, but it was impossible. By evening, I was back in my living room, pretending to read while my ears strained for every sound. Part of me hoped it was over, that I'd wake up and laugh about how paranoid I'd been. But as the clock struck midnight, the knocking came again. This time it was louder, more insistent. I didn't want to answer it, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. So I stood up, heart pounding, and opened the door. As I read those words, a shiver ran down my spine. The card said, "You're not alone." 3 simple words, but somehow they felt heavier, colder, like they were written just for me, as if whoever left them was watching me even now. I looked out into the darkness, searching for any movement, any sign that someone was out there, lurking in the shadows. But all I saw were the empty streets and the soft glow of streetlights reflecting off the snow. The silence was deafening, pressing down around me like a thick, suffocating fog. Closing the door, I locked it, double-checking the bolt, then a third time, my heart racing as I backed away, slowly. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of it all. Who would leave something like this? And why me? I held the card in my hand, my fingers tracing the edges of the thick, stiff paper. It felt old, worn, like it had been passed around, touched by countless hands before it ended up here, in my home, with that haunting message written just for me. And the words, "You're not alone." They seemed to echo in my head, a warning, a promise, a threat. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a prank, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. This wasn't just someone's idea of a joke. This felt real, personal, and dangerous. I wanted to scream, to call someone, anyone, just to hear a familiar voice, to feel safe for a moment. But something held me back, an instinctive fear that if I acknowledged it out loud, it would somehow give this presence more power over me. Instead, I forced myself to calm down, taking slow, steady breaths. "It's just a card," I told myself, "just a stupid card." But no matter how many times I repeated it, the words didn't make me feel any better. I turned the card over in my hands, examining every inch of it, hoping to find some kind of clue, something I could use to explain all of this. But there was nothing. Just the same careful, precise handwriting. "You're not alone." And then, at the very bottom, almost hidden in the corner, the same small phrase I'd seen on the first card. Night 1. My stomach twisted as I realized what it meant. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was just the beginning. Night 1. That meant there would be a night 2. And who knows how many more after that. I put the card down, feeling a strange sense of dread settle over me. It felt like a countdown had started, a clock ticking down to something. I didn't know what, but I could feel it looming, waiting, just out of reach. I tried to go back to bed, to pretend everything was fine. But as I lay there in the dark, every sound, every shadow felt like it was watching me, waiting. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop hearing those words echoing in my mind over and over. You're not alone. You're not alone. Eventually, the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, breaking the spell that held me captive. But I knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Whatever this was, it had only just begun. Thank you for watching the first night of the 12 Nights of Terror. If you're brave enough to see what happens next, join me tomorrow for Night 2. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming. Good night, if you can sleep.